Hi Nutboard Gamers, welcome back to Nutboard Gaming. I'm your host, I'm Mark. Now in today's video I'm going to be doing a spoiler-free review of my time so far in this game right here, which is Arydia, The Paths We Dare Tread from Far Off Games and Cody Miller. Now Far Off Games and Cody Miller are responsible for one of my all-time favourite games, which is Zia, Legends of a Drift System, or if you're American, Zaya, Legends of a Drift System. Well, Arydia came to Kickstarter, I think it's about 3.5 years ago, something like that, and I backed it at the tail end, and it started getting delivered to backers at the back end of last year, kind of 2024. My copy arrived early in 2025, and so far I've put about 8 hours into Arydia. So what I'm normally on my reviews, obviously I will show you components, I will show you how to get some of the gameplay, etc. But Arydia is a game that's got lots of secrets in it. So because of that, I'm going to try and make this as spoiler free as possible. In fact, all you're going to see really of the game is what you can see on the table here, because I'm kind of partway through a game at the moment. So as I say, it's a 1 to 4 player cooperative game, and it's a large kind of campaign, and they call it a green legacy game in the fact that it can be reset and played again, and you can choose different characters. 1 to 4 player, fully cooperative, and as a solo gamer you can play as either a single character or you can play up to 4 characters. Now personally, I'm playing 2 characters. When I play games like this, I always like to have 2 characters rather than true solo, because I like to use the different skills of each character to complement themselves. Now the game itself, as I say, it's this large sprawling campaign game. The information you get on what you're doing and why you're doing it is kind of sparse at the beginning of the game, and as you progress into the game, there'll be certain points where you'll learn a little bit more about your character, what their background is, what they're doing, what they're trying to achieve. So kind of it feeds you this information. So if you're looking for a game that kind of gives you everything, the reason right at the very beginning when you start playing it, then Arydia is not that game. And for me, it just took a little bit of kind of getting used to when I was first playing. So why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? But now I've reached a point where I've got some story points out, and I think, right, okay, I'm starting to see what's happening here, and there's a reason for me to kind of branching out there. So it is a it's a game of ostensibly 2 parts. There's an adventure phase, and you get this little token to track the various parts. There's an adventure phase where you're going to be traveling around a map, and I'll show you one of the hex maps very briefly here. Right, okay, and you will go on to certain areas, and certain hexes will then prompt you to put bigger tiles on the board, which are kind of detailing exactly what's on there. And there's 4 sizes of tiles. We have the big tiles, we have the medium tiles, we have the small tiles, and we also have the long tiles as well, and they will kind of create up these areas where you will explore, potentially go on points of interest, interact with NPC characters, maybe have fights and combats. There's going to be events that are going to get triggered from that, and all these things are kind of geared towards giving you a bit more of an understanding of the world that you're in and more of the story that's coming. But throughout this, you will get to level up your characters. Now, when I say it's kind of a representation of a tabletop RPG, so I think something like Dungeons and Dragons, okay, that's exactly kind of the format that this takes at the beginning. You get free reign on kind of, or pretty much free reign within the confines of the game, on setting up and designing your characters. There are 6 particular paths that you can choose from for a character. So for example, my 2 characters here, I've got an elf and I've got a fae. One is following the path of wandering, which is a little book for it. The other one is following the path of arcana. You get to choose their name, you get to choose kind of, their class or their path, if you like. You get to choose the species for them, and you get to choose the gender, because the game comes with loads and loads of pre-painted miniatures, and the production quality on these pre-painted miniatures is absolutely fantastic. Here we can see my fae here, and because there's so much adaptability, what happens is for the main miniatures, the heads and the bodies are separate. So you choose a species, you choose a path, and you choose a gender within that species, and then you will plop their heads onto them as well. So there we go. We now have our fae here. Who's this? We've got my elf here. I've got a female elf here, and you can see, and they're a ranger, and the elf head pops on. Now within the game, as I say, there are loads and loads of pre-painted miniatures, not just your characters, but also the foes that you're going to face, because they will come in at least 2 of these big boxes, a fig box on them, and within these boxes you've got certain numbers, and it says foe number on there, and you will, when you get prompted to fight a particular foe or interact with a particular foe, it'll point you to a box, and you'll flip out one of these tabs and pull out the pre-painted miniature from within. Now, I'm not going to show you any of them because, as I said, I really want this to be a complete kind of surprise for you. If you want to see pictures, you want to see gameplay, there are indeed plenty of other channels going out there who've got videos and pictures, etc., so you can go and have a look at that, but I'm going to keep this as spoiler free as possible. So you've got these wonderful pre-painted miniatures, you've got the nice surprise of kind of unveiling them as the game goes along as well. Now, let's see, two parts. I got the adventure part, which you're going to do on the hex map, and this is great because what this hex map's got here is it's got each of these hexes is on a triple layer board, and what you would do, say if that one was down, there we go. If that one was if that one was down there, you would flip it over and turn it back over that way, and there we go. You can put it there, and then you can flip it back on. So you've got these wonderful triple layer player boards that allow you to kind of work through the maps basically. Now, there may be more than just this one hex map. There may not be. I'm not going to say at this stage, but you know, the game will kind of introduce you to that. So when you set up your characters, you get these wonderful double layered boards basically, and you get to put the names and the character portrait on there and the equipment that they start with, and also their starting skills. But then you get to choose more skills as the game goes on. So if we look at my Fae just here, here we go. You can see that I've already got 3 of their skills as a space there. And again, these are triple layered boards. You would press down on one and it would pop it out of there. And then you get to kind of you get to semi-learn that skill. You don't get to master it, you get to learn it. It goes on your board. You then have to do something to master it, to trigger it, which means you can use it in the future. So the sense of progression is real in this game. You only had 5 skill slots, so you're going to, as you learn more skills, you're going to have to potentially untrain skills to learn better skills or learn more appropriate skills for you, and the game gives you that ability to do so. The leveling up system is really good as well, so you start on level 1 and I think they go up to level 10. My characters have currently just reached around about level 3, I think it is. Yeah, level 3 they've reached, and things are starting to happen for them there. They're going in wildly different ways, you know, whether it's their health, their magic points, their stamina points, etc. They're starting to have different builds, which is really kind of helping me hone in on the individuality of each character. So the exploration part is a huge part of it, kind of exploring the world, finding new hexes, seeing what's on those hexes, getting the map tiles out, exploring those map tiles, which eventually, potentially, will lead to combat as well. So combat, as I say, you're going to fight one of the foes, is when you flip this over, okay? And from your perspective, your combat is always going to be carried out using a D20. I mean, your weapons will say a particular attribute on them. So your attributes that you have are strength, dexterity, intuition, wisdom, charisma, and endurance. And your character will upgrade these stats throughout the games as they level up. So, for example, my elf currently has a dexterity of 3. Now, when you fight with a weapon, you're going to roll your D20 die, and it's got each weapon's got various tiers to say kind of how many damage it does, and also what the order of that damage. There's a particular pattern on there as well. You will roll the d20 die, you will add the attribute that the weapon tells you to add on there, and that will give you a particular number, and that will tell you what tier you're at. You can boost it when you get role-playing points as well. You know, and these are kind of interactions that you will have from cards. They will give you these role-playing points. You spend one of those, and that will allow you to add 3 onto your dice rolls. So from your perspective, combat is very much a Dungeons & Dragons style combat with a d20 and hoping that the dice rolls your way. From the foe's perspective, it's going to work from a threat deck, and this threat deck will evolve and adapt throughout the game. Basically, you draw a card and it will say on there what is going to happen, whether it's a mob that's going to take an action, whether it's the boss that's going to take an action, whether it's all foes, or whether it's going to increase the threat counter. You see, when it comes to combat, there's this combat board here. You will track your combo points on the top, and their threat will increase. The higher their threat is, generally, the more deadlier moves that they're going to do. They will spend that threat, and then they will carry out those moves. If it's a mob, that threat is only spent once, and all the mob characters carry that out. And a mob is, well, you know, kind of 2 characters or 2 baddies or more of the same type. For you, whenever you move, you're going to move. So whenever you do a move on your character when you're in combat, you're going to increase the combo tracker on here. Now that's really important because those combo trackers can trigger certain actions that you will have on your characters. So it can start making your character do more things, if you like, and you will spend that and do those particular attacks or whatever it is that you're spending the combo for. But there is a wealth of things that you can do. You can spend magic points to do certain things as well, or stamina points to do certain things, or combo, or a combination of all of these. You can supplement your weapons with other items as well that will allow you to do additional things with your weapons. So this kind of the build aspect of what you've got to do with your characters is absolutely really bloody important in the game. So it is this, I say, kind of wrapping up what the game is. Large, sprawling, 1 to 4 player co-op adventure game, which has got lots and lots of exploration, lots of unraveling things and finding things, getting minis out of the bag, lots of combat in there, and everything is absolutely driven by this card system. So with the game, you get these 3 boxes of cards. In these cards, you've got things like places of interest or points of interest, NPCs, travel cards, events, jobs that you can take, threat cards, foes, keys, which are particular cards that you would get, and they may be story relevant or provide you with something from that, and day cards as well, because essentially you're going to when you rest, you're going to flip over a card from your day from your day deck. When you travel, by the way, there's a travel deck as well, which is going to allow you to kind of it will not allow you. What it will do is just see what kind of terrain you're travelling on, and maybe if you're not travelling on the right type of terrain, you might have to eat a sandwich or something along those lines. So the game is massively driven by cards. Now, I cannot imagine the amount of time that went into making sure that all these interactions work and are covered in the cards. And I've not found, say, only 8 hours in so far, but I've not found anything where there isn't a connection there. So the sheer amount of work, and obviously one of the reasons that it took so long to come from the original Kickstarter campaign, sheer amount of work that must have gone in to make sure that everything links into the cards and all those cards interlink with each other, and every variable that you can do in the game is actually covered in here, and it absolutely works fantastic. There's an indexing system. There are certain cards that are active, certain cards that are inactive, and certain cards that will be out of the game once you've used them as well, and you get to put them at the back. Now, as I say, because you're storing all the cards, you're not destroying anything at all. It is a green legacy game, which means that you can, in fact, reset the game once you've finished with it. It might take you an hour or a couple of hours, whatever, to fully reset it and start a new adventure with new characters, because in one playthrough you're never going to see everything that's on offer. Of course you're not. So, you're going to have to kind of, if you want to see more of the world, you're going to repeat some parts, but of course there is plenty of room for scope and for just moving off in a different direction, exploring different things, but with new characters as well. So it's got an element of replayability. Now, with most campaign games, once you've played it through all the way, I'm certainly not inclined to go back to many campaign games. So what I'm looking for from a campaign game when I play it is a campaign game that gives me that kind of hook that makes me want to complete it that very first time I play it. And does Arydia do that? Well, absolutely, and I'll come on to more of that in a wee while. So let's talk about the component quality. I mentioned the miniatures, which are fantastic, and all the cards and all the high quality artwork, the triple and dual layered boards, etc. Everything that's still in the box that I haven't got to yet, that's a secret, that's all there, and they're all kind of nicely tucked away, etc. And it all fits down into, all packs away into the box that it comes in. There's a really good storage solution for most of the things. Not everything, but for most of it, for everything that kind of counts in the game, there's a really good storage solution, and the box comes with instructions on how to store it. So it all sounds fantastic. So, no game is perfect, though. What are the niggles in Arydia? Well, first of all, there's a couple of quality of use, quality of life, I suppose, quality of use things that in a game that kind of wraps everything around you in terms of production quality and caring for you on the journey and making sure every point is covered. Something like what happens with these cards. Okay, so every character that you choose, here's my Fae card, right, has got a tracker on the back, so you can track their levels, find out where they're going on there. Now, it tells you to mark off on the card when you've kind of leveled up, what your new level is and what attributes you've chosen. Because when you level up, you get to check, you get to increase one major stat, which is going to be health, magic or stamina, and then one attribute stat, and that's your strength, your dexterity, etc. So it's a mark on the card. Now, if you mark that in some form of indelible ink, that's it, it's done for life there, basically. It tells you then to use a pencil, okay, which is fine, but pencils don't really show on this. And then it says, you might want to use a sleeve as well and write on the sleeve. Find one of your own sleeves. Now, it's a minor thing, but in a game that kind of wraps its arms around you so completely. It kind of stands out that something like this, when they just say, hey, you know what, find a sleeve yourself and do that yourself. It would have been nice to have an Arydia back sleeve. On its own, it's absolutely nothing. But given in the context of everything else that the game does for you, it's just a slight niggle and annoyance that kind of really gets to me. Now, it doesn't matter too much because when you upgrade your character, you're tracking on your boards anyway. I suppose it's only if you kind of knock the game or whatever and everything goes off there just to understand exactly where you are. But when you're saving between the games and you save your boards between the games, all that information is stored on there anyway. Similarly, I say there's a really good storage solution for everything, but the game comes with a number of punch boards, and you'll never, you're not going to use all these tokens because all the upgrade tokens for certain things and tokens that will come out at particular points in games. Now, the game gives you this wonderful storage solution for everything, how it goes back in the box, but you're going to have to find your own baggies for stuff like that, basically, which again just kind of falls short of saying, oh, another storage solution, another 10 minutes. I know it's not 10 minutes. Another little bit of time spent on a storage solution to make sure everything goes back in the box in a storage. Using your own baggies again is not the end of the world. These things, as I say, they're minor. They are really minor. They do not alter your experience with the game whatsoever. But as I mentioned, because the game completely wraps its arms around you in terms of quality, they just stand out a little bit, but they're not game-breaking in any way, shape or form. I think the major thing about the game that may be a kind of barrier for people playing Arydia, and this is people who obviously like adventure games and like campaign games and like tabletop RPG, board games style games, is going to be the cost. We cannot get away from the cost that Arydia, The Path We Dare Tread, is an expensive game. I think, and I can't remember, but I think it's around about £250 for the game itself. Now, £250 is a huge amount to spend on a board game. It doesn't matter how good the game is or how much I'm enjoying the game. You have to have the availability and that disposable income to be able to invest £250 in a board game. It is a lot of money and it's going to be a huge barrier. Does that detract again from the game? Well, not really. I look at everything that's come with it and all the work that's gone into it. It's not just about the component quality and the pre-painted miniatures and etc., but it's also about all the work that's gone into it as well, in terms of making sure that everything works exactly as it should. These stories, and there are 6 paths you can choose from, so that means that each of those paths has to have its own story about where it's going to and why it's going there, etc. And all of those stories have to interlink with every one of these cards as well. It's a huge amount of work gone into making this a smooth experience, and that, I should imagine, is one of the reasons why the cost is so high. You then add on top of that the really high production values of practically everything here, the wonderful artwork, the pre-painted miniatures, all of the tuck boxes and secret boxes, wooden components, these plastic whatever you want to call them, tokens for health and for damage, etc. The dice that you use, that are used in it by the foes, all of these triple layered boards, etc. There's, you can see where the money's gone. It doesn't make any difference if you haven't got £250 to spend on it. So, if you don't have £250 spending it, I would say in a few months' time, once people have completed the campaign, there will be quite a few of these starting to see on the second-hand market, and that's probably the time to kind of nip in there. With it being Green Legacy, the only thing that you're not getting from a second-hand copy of Arydia is being the first person to open a tuck box or whatever. As long as it's all being stored back and reset correctly, then you're going to have exactly the same experience as to whether it was a new copy or not. Another thing for it as well, I'll say, it is another campaign game. We've all probably got a lot of campaign games, and we will not finish every one of them. Do you have time in your life for another campaign game? One of the great things about the storage solution and everything that they've done is you can set the game up in about 10 minutes, you can play for an hour or so, and then you can put the game away. And I say that kind of 10-minute setup, 10-minute teardown time is really, really important for a campaign game. When you consider a game like, Frosthaven or Gloomhaven, etc., where you spend a lot of time setting stuff up and then a lot of time tearing it back and trying to get everything back into the box, etc. Arydia, despite its couple of foibles on things like, nothing for the tokens, etc., does give you that ability to store everything really, really quickly. You see, on the triple layered boards that you get for each of your characters, double-head boards for your 3 boards. Everyone has its own its own sleeve, so you can pack all the tokens, etc., and cubes into its tuck box and put the boards in here, saving the character state as it is. So by doing that, they've really thought about the user experience and the user journey of setting a game up, playing it and wanting to put it away. Most things with campaign games means you've got to spend a lot of time setting it up, but you have to leave them out for a long time because you don't want to play for an hour, spend 25 minutes setting it up, play for an hour, and then have to spend 25 minutes putting it away again. It just kind of devalues the experience. But with Arydia, what they've done is saying, hey, we want you to have fun here. We want you to have fun as soon as possible. So we've created everything that we can to make this as seamless experience as it can be for you. It's, it is always going to be some setup and teardown. It's not kind of crippling in any way, shape or form. But, your ability to have yet another campaign game on the go is important. So, at the beginning, I mentioned, one of the things it does is it doesn't give you the whole story at the front as well. If you are more prescriptive in what your game is doing and what you're trying to achieve, and the sandboxy nature is not a major thing or is not something you generally gravitate towards, then again, this might be something for you, because pretty much like when the game drip feeds you the secrets of the games, the figures and particular cards and equipment, etc. It does exactly the same with the story. You're going to spend a lot of your first few hours just exploring and wandering around the land with no real, you might have the odd hint or clue or might have the odd job to do, etc. But in terms of larger story, you're going to be a little bit lost. Think of a game like Skyrim. Exactly the same happens on a game like Skyrim. You kind of wander around and then you start getting into the flow of it as the main story starts to come through. So it's going to take some time to get there. So you've got to be aware that slow build-up, whilst massively necessary to get your characters to the right place, to make sure you understand the rules, can also be a bit of a barrier. So it took me a little bit of time just to say, hold on, what am I doing here? I need to have a particular thread, but it's starting to come through now in all the gameplay that I'm playing. So, do I recommend Arydia from a solo perspective? Well, look, you can play it through solo. I choose to play it 2 players, and I will say that from the moment I got it and the moment I went through the very excellent kind of quick start tutorial, which eases you into the game, I've been in love with this game. It keeps appearing on my table. I keep thinking, right, I've got a few hours today. I'm going to set Arydia up and I'm going to play a few hours with Arydia. And that's a really important thing for me. I'm driven to come back to explore more of this wonderfully crafted world that I can see. And from a solo perspective, I'm having a really good time. You do it through solo if you want. I really enjoy having 2 characters. I've seen people out there doing it solo with 3 and 4 characters. That feels like a bit too much potential table space and also overhead for me. 2 characters feels exactly right for me, and I believe the balances kind of works exactly right there as well. So yeah, I highly recommend Arydia Path 3 Dare Tread as a solo experience. I say, if you want to go and see more footage and want to see more pictures, go and check out BGG, go and check out other people's videos. I'm not going to spoil it for you because I want you to have exactly the same experience I'm having. The joy of opening these boxes, the tactility of opening these boxes, or getting a new card, or exploring a new area, seeing what's there. Combat can be bloody difficult. Combat, it's going to take you a little bit of time to get through it. Now, in the tutorial, every path, because they do combat slightly different no matter what path you've chosen, has its own combat tutorial. You're probably going to want to do that a couple of times against a test dummy just to get to grips with the combat. But you will get to grips with it and it will start to make sense. But, it's not a breeze. Now, I think some of these adventure games can suffer from combat not feeling like it's being balanced correctly, like it's too easy or too hard. I've had to flee from at least 2 fights. I have lost a fight, but I have won quite a few fights as well. So, it feels that kind of balance, and it gives you hints about what kind of level monsters you want to go, and if you come across some foes that are a lot higher than where you are, then you can always flee from that combat and come back and tackle it again. And it's easy to kind of track that because of how you store the map tiles in here. You put them one way if you've cleared them, you put another way if you haven't cleared them. So they kind of thought of everything on there, but do make sure you get to grips with combat. So yeah, I massively recommend, if it's your kind of game, having a look at Arydia, the Path 3 Dare Tread. I think when you're looking for a close relative of this, now it's bizarre that these 2 games have come out in within a month of each other. You've got Arydia, the Path 3 Dare Tread, which is a tabletop RPG in a board game form, and you've also got the Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era from Chip Theory Games, which again is exactly the same thing. It's an adaptable RPG, now slightly different. That the campaign is short and you can play multiple variations on the campaign, etc. But they do very similar things. Now, for my money, and I love Arydia. I think Arydia is fantastic. The Elder Scrolls is still my favourite game of all time. I got an early review copy in August last year and I put about 85 hours in so far into Elder Scrolls. So I'm a long way behind on Arydia. Elder Scrolls is still my favourite from a personal perspective, but I've certainly got space for these two games in my collection because they, whilst sharing some DNA in terms of the RPG element, they provide vastly different experiences. And Arydia is an absolutely astounding game where you can understand and you can almost feel every bead of sweat that Cody Miller put into this game to try and make everything work. It's not going to be for everybody. The cost is going to be a major factor. 250 quid, you've got to decide on that. That's really not for me to say as to whether whether it's worth your money and spending that on it. The fact it's a legacy game, the fact it's a campaign game is not going to be for everybody. The fact there's dice-based combats and testing there. People like determinism, etc. The fact it takes up quite a bit of table space. The fact that the time commitment that you're going to have to put into it over the campaign to get it completed is going to be severe. And the fact that it drips feeds you parts of the story. I mean, all those things may mean it's not for you, but for me, I think it's an absolutely astounding achievement that I'm really happy that I backed when I did. And it was a bit of a last-minute back for me on the campaign that I'm really happy that I backed when I did. I can see where all the time's gone on making everything work, and I can certainly see where the money's gone, but that is always going to be a contentious issue. So for me, Arydia, The Paths We Dare Tread, is an absolutely stone-cold recommendation from Nutboard Gaming. I think it's an absolutely astounding experience, one of my favourite campaign-style games, and I say it's only pipped by Elder Scrolls, and that's Betrayal of the Second Era, but that's a personal preference. Some people may well prefer this over Elder Scrolls. Both of them are really top at their game in what they're trying to achieve. So there we go. Thank you very much for joining me on this journey through Arydia, The Paths We Dare Tread from Far Off Games, designed by Cody Miller. Yeah, I love it. I think it's fantastic and it keeps hitting my table, and it's a campaign that I am determined to finish. So yeah, my name's Mark. This is Nutboard Gaming. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out our other videos. One final thought: if you can't find anyone else to play with, then there's nothing wrong with playing with yourself.